Hello and welcome back to the Irish Tennis Updates podcast. My name's Adam, your host, and this episode I've been chatting to Conor Niland. Conor is, of course, one of Ireland's most successful tennis players and also the current Irish Davis Cup captain. But this episode we're talking about his new book, The Racket. The Racket was published at the start of June and has been really successful since then. I've read the book, really enjoyed it, and would highly recommend it. And hopefully by the end of this chat, you'll be suitably persuaded to get your hands on a copy of the book if you haven't already read it. Towards the end of the chat, we also talk a bit about the upcoming Davis Cup tie against Tunisia for the Irish team, and we also touch on the Irish Open, which is returned this year for the first year since before COVID, and is going on at the moment as I'm recording this. So let's get into the chat with Conor, all about his book. Hope you enjoy, and here's Conor. All right, so Conor, big thanks for coming back on for a chat all about your book, which I have to say, really enjoyed the book. Thought it was brilliant, very well written, and lots of good stories and stuff. And I know you've done really well. I'm kind of I'm so impressed with how well it's done since it's come out. I know it's must have been a busy. What's it been? Oh, just under 2 months now since it came out. So how have the last couple of months been for you?
Yeah, it's mad. It'll be 2 months on the 6th. So yeah, really busy. Especially the first month or so, I guess, and obviously rolling to Wimbledon then as well. So yeah, lots of chat about the book. And be interested to see now if you ask me a question I haven't been asked yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you've got a lot
But no, it's been really good fun, and obviously great to be busy with it. And as you say, the reaction I suppose has been great. I obviously knew it was a good book. I knew I'd put an awful lot into it, and but you're never quite sure what the reaction's going to be, I suppose. But no, I've been getting a steady stream of really great messages from people I know and people I don't know over the last couple of months. So it's been really good fun so far.
Definitely, yeah. I guess on that, I know you went over to Wimbledon during the tournament and did some kind of interviews over there. So how was that kind of experience for you?
Yeah, it was great. I went over. I usually go over that middle Saturday, but I went over a bit early, and went over on the first Thursday, and had a couple of interviews and things, and a couple of bookstore visits lined up. So, but I had a really amazing experience when I knew I was going to be interviewed on Radio 5, BBC Radio 5 Live, but didn't know sort of, what that looked like, whether that was going to be on the grounds or in a studio, or a press conference room or something. I didn't know. And I got the text that it was going to be on centre court, in the commentary box on centre court. So sort of ushered in, given a tag, and walked out onto sort of centre court just before the start of play. It was about 1:15, I guess. Play was starting at 1:30. Yeah. With Tiafoe Alcaraz, and went into this tiny little commentary box, and was in there with Marion Bartoli and Mark Woodford and a couple of BBC commentators, and was ended up being in there for about an hour. And then Alcaraz Tiafoe started, and I sort of stayed in there for the first set, and it's an amazing vantage point, and really something very special. Again, not something I was expecting to do, but to be in that sort of in that commentary box that I've seen millions of times was really cool. Absolutely tiny. It's like a little submarine.
Yeah.
but really cool.
Yeah. No, I guess that's probably is something kind of once in a lifetime. So yeah, it's unbelievable kind of to centre court for during a match. That's amazing. And just on I guess on the book, I guess how long was this something that you had wanted to do? I'm sure it took a long time. You're working on it, but was it kind of always something you, I guess, would have been thinking about for the last few years?
It wasn't something I was thinking about when I was on the tour or anything. I wasn't sort of thinking I'm going to write a book about this. I was approached maybe about 4 years after I retired, so about 8 years ago, by a small publisher who said, "Listen, I think you've got an interesting story here," and it didn't really go anywhere. Mostly I didn't have any time. We just had our first child, and I was doing a master's, and but it kind of planted a seed. And then when COVID came around, obviously had a bit more time and started to write a little bit, and sort of one page became 10 pages, and pretty much the first thing I wrote was the scene towards the end of the book of myself and my dad leaving the Challenger event in Kyoto in Japan, and I showed it to a couple of friends, my wife, a friend of mine, and then who both thought it was really, really good, and brought it into Penguin. And before I knew it, I was meeting the kind of the main guys in Penguin, and they were asking me to write a little bit more. And before we knew it, I had about 60 pages. So it kind of happened kind of organically, I suppose, and sort of built momentum as we went.
Yeah, definitely. And from that point, what was the process like? And who else was involved helping you? And were you kind of you sit down for a writing session and write a bit, or how did kind of the process look from that point?
Yeah, so as I say, I had that sort of initial small document of say 10 pages, and they said they really liked it, but obviously that wasn't enough for them to go off to commission a book and start getting contracts together and stuff. So I went off and did a very detailed book sort of outline of about 60, 70 pages, which obviously took a little bit of time. Again, did that kind of on my own. And then they said, yeah, we really like this. And I suppose worked or sort of spoke to a couple of writers who never really, we never really, I suppose, worked together on it to any significant amount. There was a lot of conversations, and over the course of probably a year, not a whole pile happened. So, but I was continuing to write scenes and bits and
Yeah.
pieces. So it was about a year and a half, 2 years, effectively working on it by myself, and then we brought in a guy called Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie in, I guess, end of kind of started about January 2022, I guess it was, give or take. And then we worked on it together. He would do interview, and maybe say interview me. He'd write something up, and I'd take it and sort of put my own spin on it, I suppose. And as I say, continuing to write scenes and bits and pieces. So we kind of brought it over the line together. But an awful lot of the writing and the prose is mine, I suppose. And I think that you sort of probably can see that consistency of voice. And again, even the interview stuff that would write up, I'd put my own context and memories and thoughts on it as well. So you have that sort of consistency of voice. Obviously, I have a degree in English from Berkeley, and that was one of the things that attracted Penguin to it as well. The fact that I could bring this sort of world to life a little bit more than maybe your average guy who's been top 200. And that, I think that worked quite well as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess when you were writing this, was a lot of it coming, from your own memories, your own, recollections of these, over several years, obviously these events, or had you had kind of some records that you were able to dip into, or your memory was a lot of it.
The records that I mostly used were actually from the ITF kind of websites that I was able to obviously look back and see all the matches I'd played and be able to place exactly where I was at any given time. There weren't extensive notes or journals or anything of significance. There were certainly emails and documents, I suppose, that I was able to draw from. But a lot of it was just reflection, and every time I thought of something, over the course of the 3 or 4 years, I wrote it down and was able then to sort of just tie it all together. It's hard work writing a book, and there's lots of things that pop into your head that are useful and lots that aren't, and there's an awful lot of stuff that was written about and spoken about that didn't make it into the book because it didn't necessarily, it needs to all obviously work. It can't just be a chronology, but it all needs to make sense from a narrative perspective. So it was really challenging at times, with a full-time job and kids and all the rest as well. But delighted to get it over the line.
Definitely. And just a kind of a couple of points just from reading the book that I was kind of interested or kind of struck by. One, I suppose, is the value to you as a as a touring player of traveling with other people. So I know that at one point you kind of would have traveled with groups of maybe some British players. So what would you say the value is? I guess in part of it, I'm sure it's quite obvious what the value is of traveling with other people. But how much of a difference does that make to you when you're going out for a week somewhere pretty remote to have, be traveling with a group of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the practical stuff, that it's company, it's somebody in your corner, it's somebody to warm up with if you need, it's somebody to scout matches. There's all that, which obviously adds up and helps. I've just reeled off sort of 4 or 5 things there that, from a
Yeah,
practical
yeah,
perspective, help. And when you're in a very competitive environment like pro tennis, and I've just given sort of 4 or 5 advantages in a single breath, it shows you how much of a difference it makes. And then you've got the intangibles, like there's somebody there who's on a journey with you, and that makes it more exciting and more motivating. And you're able to give the fist bump into the corner after you win a big point. And obviously then you're on there's logical progressions as well in terms of your tennis game, that over the next 6 weeks we're going to work on X and Y. And even if you win or lose, we're on a journey and a pathway here to make your tennis better. Or I worked a lot on margin for error with Joe. I was constantly working on that in tournaments, whether I won or lost, and sort of honing that and making it automatic. And it only really comes automatic through practice drills. So somebody can be telling you on the phone that you need to bring your margin for error in, but unless you're actually out there working on it, and really making it muscle memory, it doesn't work. So there's the practical stuff, and then there's the real longer term vision of making you a better player, and then there's the on court sort of psychology too.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I was kind of interested in, you're kind of almost, and I guess not surprised, but just when you get to that level of kind of cut off slam qualies kind of level, and I guess a couple of times that you would have gone out to I think Australia in particular, to slam qualies, not actually being in the draw, hoping to get into the draw, as kind of someone pulling out. And I guess that's something that might have happened again for some ATP events and things like that. Well, what's the mindset like if you're, especially Australia, it's a very long way away to maybe not even play a tennis match? So what's the mindset like for a kind of a situation like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, you try not to make it a regular occurrence.
Yeah,
It's definitely on the extreme end, and the way it worked out was amazing. That I became the last guy in, and happened to be there, and had made that taking that risk, I suppose. And again, for my first slam, it was something I was willing to do. But you don't want to be doing that too often.
yeah,
But luckily for me, I did it. But again, on the other side of the coin, like I said, I in the book, I went to Doha in 2012, on my way to Australia, and didn't get in. Didn't get into qualies there. I guess I was ranked about 240 or 230, or maybe at the time, maybe even a little bit higher. And didn't get in. So it sort of swings and roundabouts. And again, you get that at futures too. Like you can rock up at a futures and not get in. It happened to me once, maybe twice. So yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. And thank
yeah.
God, the trip to Australia was one where I did eventually get even though it was very late in the day when I
Yeah,
found out.
yeah, and I guess of course, you did get in, and then it's a funny mindset that you're in going into the match. You maybe you haven't done all the preparations that you would normally do for a match. The opponents, you would have found out probably 10 minutes ago. So it's tricky. Even once you're lucky enough to get in, it's still not an ideal kind of situation for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, not to give the story away, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly.
I'm very much last minute. Can't scout my opponent,
Yeah,
and then come off court and find out a couple of things about him that would have probably helped, and losing a close one. So it was. Yeah, I suppose it showed the slightly chaotic nature of certainly my career, but I guess a lot of pro tennis players, and how adaptable you need to be.
yeah,
That it isn't all, certainly at that level, I suppose. But again, even looking at the Olympics, and a guy like Matt Ebden I think got in as an alternate,
yeah, yeah,
goes and plays Djokovic, and obviously it's a real mismatch in terms of where his level is at in singles these
yeah,
days. But then is still, you know, laces up for the doubles and is in with a shout for a medal now. So, and he's very established. So you constantly just need to be able to
yeah,
roll with the punches, and it is something that I think that was one of the things I was good at. Was I wasn't precious. I was able to deal with stuff. And I sometimes think, certain players, maybe they haven't they everything can so almost be a little bit too perfect for them in their earlier career, their junior career, and then they find it more difficult to deal with sort of setbacks and knocks sometimes when they come into the pro tour, because it's an awful lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess another thing from the book that I had realized that you had some training blocks at certain points with Murray, who I guess at the moment is topical. His kind of Olympics run is pretty cool. But for you, how was that experience? I know at the time he was obviously a top player as well. So was that a good bit of value for you in training with a player like that?
Yeah, absolutely. He was two in the world when I went to train with him in 2010. So he was right up there, and I think had he won US Open at that stage? I don't know, but he was two in the world, I remember. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
It gave me a lot of confidence actually going into challengers and stuff straight
yeah,
after. And I think I went to an ATP event in Valencia maybe the week after. And yeah, you just feel like, once you've had that sparring, obviously I think your level is, you're really dialed in and really sharp, but you're also
yeah,
just feel a little bit more confident.
yeah,
And yeah, he obviously had a lot of support, a lot of people around him to help. But he was, yeah, always pretty thoughtful and decent with me. And again, I think that comes through in the book. There's obviously a good few incidents I mentioned in the book where he helped when he didn't have to. And yeah, it's great to see him still out there fighting for his career and fighting for big things as well. Hopefully he can
yeah.
he can sneak. It'd be incredible if he could sneak a medal here at the Olympics. I think it'd be
Yeah,
really, really fitting.
big time, big time. And just yeah, one kind of final thing from the book that I found funny was, if I remember the timing right, after you qualified for Wimbledon, that you met someone and being asked if you played tennis full time, which I thought was
Mm.
a funny, obviously funny comments. Maybe shows that how the kind of attention that it's getting and maybe not being as much attention as you deserve, frankly. So
Mm.
how would you kind of take that? Obviously, it's funny, but how would you kind of take that kind of comment?
Yeah, I mean, it happened a couple of times in that immediate aftermath, and yeah, I suppose it just obviously if you're not involved in it, you don't realize just the amount
Yeah,
of tournaments you need to play to
yeah,
get to that ranking. I suppose the counter argument for these guys will be, oh well, I think there's probably Olympians right now who are not necessarily full time athletes.
mhm,
There's probably is
yeah,
a handful of people who are in college and all that.
yeah, yeah,
But obviously, with the way the pro tour works, it's obviously so competitive, and the amount of commitment. I suppose when you read that line in the context of when you're reading the book and seeing
yeah, yeah, of
what
course.
I'm the lengths
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going
yeah, yeah,
to,
yeah,
but at the same time, I suppose it was the fact that who was saying it was just interesting. It
yeah.
was a little bit of a faux pas, definitely.
Yes, yeah, and just kind of I guess a final reflection on this of I guess looking back at your career, which obviously the book does very well. What would be maybe one thing that if you could do differently in order to maybe crack that top 100, which I know you got so close to? Would there be one kind of thing that you'd look back at in that kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it. I've said it a little bit the last few weeks because obviously that's kind of come up, and
Yeah,
I suppose that there's two big periods I think in a player's career. There's the sort of 12, 13 years old to 16 period, um, and then there's just say the 16 to 18. I think they're two slightly different stages, and I think you can sort of salvage your career or make a career in that block in those two blocks. And I chose to go to a boarding school in England at 16. And talk about it again in the book,
yeah,
potentially going to Bollettieri's, would have given me, I think, just much more exposure. And going back to what I was saying about the training with Andy Murray, if I could have gotten that, which I would have gotten at Bollettieri's at 16, 17, 18, I think it would have just maybe put a different, um, I guess, a different spin on my outlook as well. Because again, when you're in Ireland and England, well, in England in those days, you didn't really have any exposure to top players, even top
yeah,
250
yeah,
guys, never mind top 50 guys. So just being around that environment, I think would have helped an awful lot. And obviously went for the safer, more closer to home option.
yeah,
And I think it did sort of probably, you know, pull the reins in a small bit on my I probably did well to have enough ambition out of there because, very few guys out of Millfield have gone on to do anything really in tennis. There's been a couple of guys in recent years who've done great things, but they haven't churned them out. So I think it's hard when you go in there to believe. Whereas if you go to a Bollettieri's type environment, everyone's there nearly expecting to be really, really good. So all that makes a big difference.
Yeah, interesting. It's those kind of early decisions and early kind of moves that really make a difference later on.
Yeah, and I think going to a Bollettieri's at 12, 13, 14 is a different ball game in terms of family commitment and family decisions. I think making that move at 16 makes is much easier. I think for a family to make a decision like that. I think when you're 13, again, that would probably take you up another level. But then is that a risk worth taking? I don't know if I'd be comfortable with it. So that's everybody's got to make their own decisions.
Yeah, and just to kind of move on to a couple of final questions, slightly different angle, but just I guess maybe Davis Cup. Obviously, you're the current Davis Cup captain as well within tennis, and so I guess it's kind of coming up now, a month, 6 weeks or something until the next tie. So I guess maybe to look forward to that, and also maybe briefly on the tie back in Limerick, which obviously didn't go away in the tennis, but I think pretty successful weekend.
Feels like about 10 years ago for me anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've got Tunisia away in Tunis middle of September. So, it'll be on clay. They're good. They've got a good side. They've got a couple of guys, who are winning matches regularly on the Challenger Tour. So we're a little bit underdogs. And they've got a double Sky Top 100 as well. So they're going to be a real handful. So, but we've performed really well away from home in recent years, and we've got a really talented player in Michael Agui who's proven he can win matches at the challenger level and is comfortable on clay. As is Conor Gannon, who's shown he can win matches and play great tennis. Probably nearly his best surface, in my opinion, but potentially is clay. So I think we'll be really competitive. Oscar O'Husheen and has also been really, really good, and we've got a couple of other younger guys potentially there to come in. So, really excited for it as always. It's always a privilege, and as I say, the Davis Cup in February feels like a long time ago. Obviously, indoors against Austria, it was an amazing occasion. 2,500 people Saturday and Sunday. It won't probably, it'll feel a little bit different this one in Tunisia, and we need to be very, very mindful that we get ourselves, in the right headspace for what's going to be, a really, really challenging, competitive match against Tunisia.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely exciting for you and anyone watching it. Yeah, definitely looking forward to hearing about the team and the tie itself in a few weeks. A lot to look forward to there.
Yeah, we've the Irish Open. We've the Irish Open in a couple of weeks, which is great having that back. Which obviously it gives us an opportunity to see the guys, compete. From my perspective as well, and obviously, we can just see them up close. It's a little bit like a bonus training camp week almost, which is nice, quite close to the tie.
That's kind of definitely something I was interested in just mentioning. Obviously, first time we've had the Irish Open in 5 years. Was thrilled to see it coming back this year. Well, what does that kind of mean for, I guess, Irish tennis? Yeah, you kind of mentioned it there, from Davis Cup point of view, but it's really big for Irish tennis to have that tournament back.
Yeah, it is. It's big, and yet on the other hand, it's the bare minimum, right? It's one futures, so we shouldn't be getting too excited. We should probably have 6 of them and a challenger and a tour event if we were operating at full tilt. And I know there's money and all that good stuff to talk about with that, but that's really what we need to be aiming for. So obviously, it's a heck of a lot better than having none. Gives guys an opportunity to win matches and play on home soil and all that. So I think we've done a better job last couple of years of putting on junior world ranking events, and obviously we're starting to send teams more regularly to winter cups and summer cups as well, which is great. And some of the juniors are really out there with pretty good. 1 or 2 of them are playing a pretty good schedule now as well. So a couple of the under 14 guys. So yeah, can't really looking forward to it. Can't wait to be involved with the Davis Cup, and obviously, as I say, it's nice to have that Irish Open back.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, as you said there, they've Tennis Ireland have done a really good job with those junior ITFs and Tennis Europes. I guess the next step is more futures, more senior international tournaments. So hopefully that could be something that can happen in the next few years. But step one of that plan was get it back, get this one back. So
Yeah,
that's it's looking good.
that can be the hardest. That can be the hardest part, is getting
Yeah,
one going, and yeah, it's obviously a ladies' event as well,
yeah.
which is great. So it gives people lots of opportunities. So hopefully we can sneak a winner on the men's, the women's side from Ireland. Would be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess those doubles draws, especially, we hopefully probably have a few strong teams in there for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Connor, I think I'll leave it there. So just a big thanks again for the time. Interesting to hear your thoughts on kind of Irish tennis stuff there at the end, but yeah, mainly about the book. So yeah, big yeah, thanks, and obviously just well done on the book. That's done really well,
Thanks
and
so much.
we'll continue to do so, I'm sure. So yeah, well done, and
Yeah,
yeah, appreciate the time today.
you'll have me back on for the sequel in a couple of
Exactly.
years.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
No plans yet.
Yeah.
But no, listen, Adam, always a pleasure. So thanks for having me on.
And once again, just a big thanks to Conor Niland for his time coming on the podcast again. Big well done again on the book, on the success that it's had, and all the best with it going forward. Um, do check out the book if you haven't. It's available in all good bookshops and even some of the dodgy ones too. Hope you enjoy it. Also hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do share it around if you enjoyed. And thanks for listening. Until next time, I've been Adam, and goodbye.